Spoilers ahead. Watch out, and take care. The movie begins in a small town with a lake. On Friday, Andy Sykes is cleaning up in his basement. Meanwhile, his wife Martha talks to his brother, Sheriff Zeke Sykes, upstairs. Andy hears their voices, and realizes someone has entered the house. Zeke says hi to Sally, Andy's daughter, just before Martha sends her to the basement, to get a box of cereal. Andy, scared, hides in the storage room of the basement. Sally finds him, and he begs her not to tell anyone he's hiding. She takes the cereal upstairs. When Zeke asks if she was talking to someone, she denies it, and Martha unknowingly clears any suspicion by saying Sally has an imaginary friend named Melissa. The phone rings, and Martha answers. It's Reed, Zeke's partner, with news about a case. Sally heads back to the basement with her cereal, which Zeke finds suspicious. He follows her, stops her from entering the storage room, and finds nothing inside. Suddenly, they hear tires screeching. Zeke runs out to see Andy has stolen the neighbor's car and escaped. Andy calls Steph Burton, wife of his accomplice, Ed Burton, urging her to meet him at Shimmer Lake. Zeke picks up his partner Reed, who is visibly irritated that he can't sit in the front seat of the police car. During their drive, it's revealed Zeke was shot in the shoulder during a recent robbery, adding tension to their partnership. Steph, sporting a noticeable wound on her face, packs a bag with a sense of urgency, her behavior raising suspicions. Meanwhile, Zeke and Reed arrive at the home of Judge Brad Dawkins, accompanied by FBI agents Kyle Walker and Kurt Biltmore. They find the front door ajar, and discover Judge Dawkins' lifeless body inside. As this unfolds, Steph visits the grave of Edward Burton Jr., becoming emotional. Andy reaches Shimmer Lake, carrying a bag filled with money, and waits for Steph. While the FBI agents discuss the case with Zeke, he decides to head to Burton's place for more information. Steph, vigilant from her window, watches as a car approaches her house. She then leaves discreetly to meet Andy. As Andy transfers the money into the car trunk, a man bearing a tattoo state champs emerges, and shoots him 3 times, leaving him dead. Flashback to Thursday, Judge Dawkins attempts to contact Ed Burton, but fails. Andy visits Steph at her house, where she reveals that Dawkins has the money. She hands Andy a gun, urging him to kill Dawkins, and retrieve the money. Elsewhere, Zeke visits Martha and Sally, offering to drive Sally to school. During the drive, he talks to her about the importance of cleaning up their town, hinting at deeper issues they are both facing. Reed and Zeke arrive at Reed's place, where the ongoing issue of Reed not being allowed to sit in front of the car resurfaces. Meanwhile, Steph rummages through a storage closet, causing a box of Ed Burton Jr.'s shoes to fall, triggering memories of a past incident, involving an explosion at Shimmer Lake. In a distraught state, she intentionally injures herself with an iron from the closet. At his home, Judge Dawkins nervously watches the news, learning that police have identified Ed Burton and Andy Sykes as suspects. It's revealed that Dawkins was involved in the bank robbery, because he was being blackmailed with compromising videotapes. Elsewhere, Zeke and his fellow officers discover that addict Chris, suspected to be the third accomplice, the driver in the robbery, has been found dead in a motel room. Discussions among the officers hint at Chris's slow behavior, caused by an accidental meth lab explosion in the past, which also led to Ed's imprisonment, and the death of his and Steph's child. Zeke mentions that Chris and Ed were involved with the same girl in the past. During these revelations, Zeke also reveals that Andy was the prosecutor in Ed's case, and took a bribe to drop manslaughter charges against him. When Zeke and the police arrive at Steph Burton's house, she informs him that Ed assaulted her, after she refused to flee to Mexico with him. Andy calls Zeke, pretending he's in Mexico, but Zeke presses him for the truth about Ed's case. Andy admits to taking the bribe. Zeke warns him to surrender or face consequences. Meanwhile, Dawkins entertains his lover at home, revealing his sexuality when the lover turns out to be a young teenage boy. Andy sneaks into the house, and threatens him to hand over the money. Just as Andy is about to leave with the money, Dawkins' lover accidentally reveals his presence, escalating the situation. In the heat of the moment, Andy accidentally shoots Dawkins in the head, allowing the boy to leave under the condition to keep quiet, and flees back to his house, and hides in the basement. Flashback to Wednesday, in the aftermath of the heist, Andy and Chris find themselves in Chris's car, strategizing their next moves. Andy suggests stashing their getaway car in one of the barns, and rendezvousing at Rudy's scrapyard later at night. Meanwhile, Reed's expression darkens upon seeing Steph seated beside Zeke in the front of their car, as they arrive to pick him up. They head to Steph's place, seeking her cooperation and insight into her husband's activities. Simultaneously, FBI agents spot Zeke outside Steph's house for the first time. Zeke engages with them, persuading them to let him handle the investigation locally, citing their shared history in high school football. Later, he and local law enforcement visit Chris's residence for further clues, only to come up empty-handed. In contrast, Chris receives an unexpected call from Steph, arranging a clandestine meeting at a motel. Chris enters the motel room to find Steph provocatively attempting to unsettle him, eventually leading to a fatal accident involving Judge Dawkins. Startled, Dawkins arrives unexpectedly, and in a moment of confusion, accidentally shoots Chris with the latter's own firearm. In the aftermath, Steph persuades Dawkins to temporarily hold onto the stolen money, until the heat dies down. Dawkins, fraught with guilt over his actions, returns home to his wife, masking his turmoil behind a poker game pretext. Reflecting on his transgressions, he breaks down, lamenting his failures as a husband. Flashback to Tuesday, the day of the planned robbery. The focus shifts to Ed Burton, whose state champ's tattoo is revealed, his home life with his wife as tensions simmering over past triumphs and tragedies, particularly Steph Burton's relentless demands for him to confront his guilt over her child's death. Ed storms out, leaving a tense atmosphere behind. Elsewhere, at the Sykes residence, Andy becomes increasingly edgy around Martha and Sally, his anxiety mounting as the heist draws near. Meanwhile, providing comic relief, Sean returns, accompanying Zeke and Ed in the car, with Reed reluctantly squeezed into the back seat. Shifting to Ed working in a workshop, painting chairs, when Judge Dawkins, the bank's owner, calls, coerced by Ed to divulge the locker codes, under duress of blackmail. Later, Andy and Chris join Steph and Ed, to finalize plans for the robbery. Despite Steph's doubts, Ed insists it's their only chance for a fresh start. Zeke arrives at the bank for his shift, as Dawkins prepares to leave, cryptically advising Zeke to prioritize shooting, rather than arresting in the event of a robbery attempt. As planned, Ed, Andy and Chris execute their heist. Zeke, initially reading a book, surrenders himself as a hostage when Ed and Andy take control. Outside, Andy and Chris stand watch, ready to flee once the job is done. Zeke recognizes the robbers, and cooperates, assisting Ed with accessing the locker codes. Outside the bank, Chris anxiously questions Andy about returning to normalcy after the heist. Andy, however, confesses the harsh truth: things can never be the same. Inside, tensions escalate between Zeke and Ed. Zeke, goaded by the accusation of responsibility for Ed Jr.'s death, shoots him with a concealed gun hidden in his dinner bag. Zeke frees himself from handcuffs, just as Steph unexpectedly enters, revealing the truth about Ed Jr. The two were his biological parents. The heist involving them all was a ploy by Zeke and Steph, to seek justice for their son's death. Zeke executes Ed Burton, and meticulously stages the crime scene according to their plan. Steph shoots Zeke in his numbed arm, as part of their strategy, revealing Zeke shares the same tattoo as Ed. Steph then kills Andy, ensuring everything unfolds as intended. Zeke exits the bank, frightening away Andy and Chris as they flee in their getaway car. He deactivates the bank alarm, while Steph conceals Ed's body and his car, in a pre-dug hole at Shimmer Lake. Inside the bank, Zeke lies beside Ed's blood, finalizing their meticulously designed scheme. Meanwhile, Chris and Andy are pulled over for speeding, but they are quickly released without suspicion. Responding to the bank heist call, Reed is the first officer on the scene, contacting law enforcement and medical support. Zeke calmly gives his statement, and begins his investigation, closing the chapter on their carefully orchestrated plan for justice and revenge. The end. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. Turn on the notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out.